My channel has officially over 7,000 subscribers. I can't even remember when I created this channel, but it doesn't feel real, especially because most of my subscribers don't even watch my videos. I'll be reading my subscribers' unpopular opinions about Japan. I was originally going to wait for more people to comment on the video, but I figured that I would just be waiting in vain, so here I am. First comment, please make video MXTET, Japanese Scholarship Natural Science B, Pharma, Maths B. There's a reason why I no longer reply to MEXT related comments. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think it's quite rude to leave a comment about a subject that is unrelated to the video. Next, I've been watching your videos for at least 2 years because I'm applying for MEXT. Good to see your channel growing, Komi-san. Thank you so much. My unpopular opinion is that I think the vast majority of the difficulty in learning Japanese lies in the kanji alone. If you weren't for the kanji, Japanese would probably be considered an intermediate language to learn, or at least much easier, like Korean or something, I guess. What do you think? I think I agree with this comment. I think the kanji characters make the Japanese language unnecessarily complicated for learners. But I have heard people saying that Korean, which is similar to Japanese, is still difficult for foreigners because of its grammar and the polite language that Korean has, just like Japanese. Another thing that makes Japanese very difficult is the particles that we have. Usually you can tell how good someone's Japanese is by looking at whether they can use the particles correctly. So I do agree with you that the kanji makes Japanese more difficult than it should be, but I would be opposed to the idea of removing kanji from the language, because then the language would lose so much of its richness and the subtleties. Next comment. I'm happy for you, thank you. I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion, but I think that the face Japan projects to promote tourism is one of the best facades ever made, as the population is some of the most depressed in the world. Once again, I have to agree with this. I think in the media, Japan is portrayed as this tourist haven where you get to experience really punctual public transport, the animation and the gaming industries, delicious but affordable food, clean cities, polite, helpful people, and all of these things are, of course, true. But the Japan that you experience as a tourist is quite different from what you experience as a student, as a worker, or a resident. I was born and raised in this country and I've lived here for a couple of decades, so I think I can say that I haven't seen a single person who is happy about their job. People here work so many hours for such low wages, and changing jobs mid-career is quite rare in this country, so I believe that most people feel stuck in their job or even trapped by their superiors. Partly because of that, we have a very high suicide rate, we have an alarmingly low birth rate, we have so many corrupt politicians and many corporations that exploit their workers. So, all in all, I love this country, I love living here, but I hate working here, and I also hated studying here. Next comment. Well, there is a lot of effort put in. Sorry for the rant, but I give a lot of my own opinions. That's cool. In terms of unpopular opinions, I might have one in that people should explore more than just Tokyo, Osaka, or even other cities that are popular tourist spots like Sapporo. I personally would want to go to towns like Hakodate and predominantly smaller towns that do not have that large of a population, especially of tourists like Ashoro or Saroma. I would rather want to live in a city rather than just tour it. Everyone who goes to Japan just for the tourists and weebish parts are never going to get the true Japanese experience. Side note, since I would be a foreigner, then I could take the Hokkaido rail pass for 10 days just to go to basically every city I could along the routes if possible. Although it is true that these touristy places like Tokyo, Osaka and Kyoto are amazing places to visit, you should definitely explore the rest of the country because we have so much to offer. Yes, it might not be as accessible and you may not be able to communicate in English as easily as you would in Tokyo, for example. but you're definitely missing out. And another thing that I should mention is that in a lot of touristy places, especially Kyoto, they have a big over-tourism problem. So I think people living in those cities would benefit from having a little fewer tourists. So one person agrees with this comment, but another person says, looking for a true Japanese experience can be a bit of a trap because Tokyo is still Japan. Just because it's touristy and popular doesn't make the city any less Japanese, and I do agree with this point. The next comment. I'm not sure whether this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I think focusing on pitch accent is a waste of time and energy for most Japanese learners. It's okay to speak Japanese or any foreign language with an accent, I agree. I do agree that the pitch accent is not really important in Japanese, and it's definitely okay to not sound like a native speaker. Also, having worked in a Japanese school for several years, that idea that Japan is so clean is vastly overrated. Obviously, people can see that large cities in Japan are cleaner than those in many countries, but the cleanliness is often superficial, particularly in places without professional cleaning staff. For example, people online will talk about how Japanese schools don't have janitors because the students clean their own schools, and while I do think there are good aspects to this, the result is that, in my experience, the schools aren't terribly clean. Kids are still kids, and huge numbers of students simply stand in one place for 10 minutes aimlessly, moving a broom around. I was also the only person who ever cleaned the tea kitchen in the teacher's room. My colleagues would tell me that I was erai and so Japanese, which I found weird, since I, the only non-Japanese person in the school, was practically the only person to ever clean it. I have only been to a handful of countries in the world, but as you said, the big cities in Japan are much cleaner than those in many other countries. But if you look closely, you will still see a lot of rubbish on the streets, and many people do litter. So it is kind of a myth that there's no rubbish in public places in Japan. And it is less common than in other countries, but I have seen dirty public restrooms in Japan. Although, on average, Japanese restrooms are much cleaner. And what you said about kids cleaning the schools, do agree that a lot of kids don't really clean meticulously. And the whole cleaning thing is, I would say, more of a ritual than an actual attempt to improve the hygiene of the school. Next comment. Congratulations bro, but the reference on the thumbnail is not really funny. Okay, next comment. I think it is disgusting that most Japanese people don't wash their hands after using the toilet, and the people who do don't even use soap. And I see a lot of comments saying that this is not exclusive to Japan, they see the same in other countries, and I have to agree with the comments. Yes, it is true that many people in Japan don't wash their hands after using the toilet. It's unfortunately true, especially among older males. And yes, it's also true that people just wash their hands without soap, but this happens everywhere. Personally, I am a germaphobe, so I do wash my hands every single time, but sometimes when you go to a public bathroom, they don't have hand soap. I don't know what they're thinking, but even with hand soap available, there are still many people who don't wash their hands, and I do agree that it is disgusting. So what did you think about these opinions? And do you have any other unpopular opinions about Japan?